Hi guys, this is gsn1.com and I'm here with the TP-Link Neffos C5 Max for a full review. This is part of the first wave of phones that router maker TP-Link has proposed, and that series is called Neffos and this is the C5 Max. TP-Link was founded in 1996 and they're best known for their network equipment and especially routers. They're a company from China that's selling this phone priced at $227. Seen from the front, it's an LG G3 lookalike, but it's a mid-ranger by definition with an interesting choice of UI. It's part of a trio with the Neffos C5 and C5L. As far as the design is concerned, we get here a plastic case. The facade looks like the LG G3. The back reminds me of a lower-end Nokia Lumia or Microsoft Lumia phone, and this panel is actually removable. It's made a pretty thin plastic and pretty flimsy plastic, to be honest. That's the cover, quite slim and quite flimsy, and below it we can find the non-removable battery, the micro SD card slot and the two SIM slots here. In spite of saying that the back cover is flimsy, we have an okay build and an interesting shiny and glittery pattern in the logo area below the screen. The grip is quite good, although it's not exactly the ideal phone for one-hand usage. It's quite tall and also quite wide. It measures 8.95mm in thickness and weighs 161 grams, which for a 5.5 incher is a bit on the big side. It's 12 grams heavier than the LG G3, for example. We got comfy buttons here, and there are no gimmicks. We don't have a 2.5D panel at the front and nothing special. It's an utilitarian design, so to say, and a wide and tall phone. Now the screen you're seeing here is a 5.5 incher with an IPS LCD panel and a Full HD resolution. We got Gorilla Glass protection and a contrast supposed to offer 1600 to 1 contrast. Now as far as the video player goes, it's a very straightforward affair, no extras. You just play your videos and be done with it. No extra options that we can see aside from the obvious and usual pop-up play-like feature. Okay, now as far as the actual screen experience goes, we're dealing here with a pretty okay brightness. The contrast leaves a bit to be desired. We have wide view angles, typical for an IPS, and the black is more gray, so the screen is a bit too white. The colors are reasonably calibrated. Okay, let's go back, see it again. Once again, the colors are pretty okay, and the pixels have an RGB stripes setup, which I'm going to show you now. So let's find the setup. This is what the screen looks like under the microscope, RGB stripes setup, and then we measured the brightness and achieved 3 different results. So at the top part of the screen, 398 lux units, at the middle part of the screen 385 lux units, and at the low part of the screen 369 lux units. The differences are small, you will not notice them with your eye, but it remains a screen with not so uniform brightness. Anyways, the maximum level of brightness surpasses the ASUS Zenfone 2 Deluxe and the LG G5, for example. The same value places us below the LG Nexus 5X and the Yumi Max, and of course the screen gets its very own settings. So we go to the settings area, display, we got wallpaper, brightness level, adaptive brightness, device rotation, sleep, daydream, font size, and that's it. There's no color tweak here. Overall a reasonable screen for the price, and now we move further to other aspects, and by other aspects I mean the CPU. It's an octa-core MediaTek MT6753 CPU clocked at 1.3 GHz with a Mali T720 GPU of the MP3 kind. We also get 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of storage and a micro SD card slot. Luckily there is no lag here and the interface is quite fluid, although I have encountered some lag in the menu of the game Vertigo Racing, but that was the only experience I had with that. The apps open up reasonably fast, so no problem there, and aside from the game's slight lag in menus, I'm content with what we got. Okay, so our usual benchmark game is Riptide Gp Renegade. Let's turn down the volume a bit and enjoy a race right here. This game really puts to the test the whole graphics thing. You can see the frame rate, how good it is, and also the lighting, the controls, how responsive they are. Okay, so pretty responsive controls, the water looks nice, all the textures are in place, there is no frame rate drop, no stuttering and no problems whatsoever, although I am stuttering gameplay wise. Okay, yet another failed ramp, but anyways, the game seems to look fine, and you'll see afterwards that there's no temperature increase when playing the game for a long time, which is a good thing. Okay, we're done with gaming. Gaming checks out okay. And now as far as the benchmarks are concerned, yes, we also did those. And let's see what came out. So as usual, we started off with Quadrant. Well, in Quadrant we surpassed the HTC One A9, which is not a bad feature. Also the Huawei G8, once again a pretty good feature. And in Antutu 6 we were able to beat the Huawei Honor 5X and also the Samsung Galaxy A7 2016, so that's quite nice. Of course, sadly the GPU did not live up to expectations. I'm talking about the other benchmarks like 3D Mark, GFX, where the scores were rather modest. You can see this one here or several other ones. The GPU is basically placed at the 90th place of all time, so not exactly impressive, but it can fight other phones from China we tested. When it comes to the temperature test, we achieved 36.1 degrees Celsius after running the game you saw before for 15 minutes, while the intensive benchmark GFX bench only brought us to 35.2 degrees Celsius, so no big overheating here, and the performance is actually quite good. You saw before the battery, it's a lithium-ion 3045 mAh unit, and let's see how it did in our tests. Our tests involve HD video playback in a loop, and we were able to achieve 8 hours and 1 minute of continuous HD video playback. Not exactly impressive, especially for this size, but at least we surpassed the Huawei P9 Lite and the OnePlus 3, which are quite famous phones. Still, we scored below the Vernitor and LG AKA, which are more modest and less known devices. In PC Mark, the result was rather good, not exactly mind-blowing, 6 hours 52 minutes, which is okay-ish, surpasses the Huawei P9 Lite again and the Nexus 6P. We also scored below the Vernitor again and the Blackview Ultra Plus as well. Now the charging is done in 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is reasonable and superior to the Sony Xperia X Compact, for example. Settings also offer battery options, quite typical. We got standby, intelligent power saving and battery saver, and that's that. I would have to say that the battery is a mid-level one, doesn't blow our minds. Also, it's not underwhelming, it's just as it should be for a low price. Now on the acoustics front, we got a speaker placed right here and a player that supports formats pretty generously. It can handle MP3, OGG, FLAC and WAV. There is no special acoustic technology that we know of and no special equalizer. We actually searched for it and no trace of equalizer whatsoever. So let's listen to some music. Okay, now the conclusions. As you probably heard before, we don't have a strong bass. That's the main problem here. The sound doesn't seem to have any weight, so to say. And aside from that, I have to say that the volume is quite okay. The keys and the guitar are well rendered, but the lack of bass may be a problem. It's a pretty loud phone with no big distortion, so those are pluses. Also, muffling is not exactly a big problem, so let's try it out. So you lose maybe 1 or 2 decibels, but nothing major, so muffling not a problem. Now let's see how our device did in the decibel meter test. So we achieved 85.6 decibels at the back, and at the front 84.9 decibels. As you can see, we lost some units, and the big value, the one that matters the most, actually is the equal of the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, so not bad. We surpassed the Galaxy S7 but scored below the M-Star S700, for example. The headphones bundled with the device reminded me a lot of my very own iPhone 3GS headphones. They actually look very much alike. I have to say they're quite comfy, loud and clear, and the bass was okay, but not more than that. Thanks to them, and by the way, huge remote, and thanks to them you can trigger the FM radio feature once connected. Okay, so let's look for FM radio. Here we go, which includes a standard interface and the option to record straight from FM. Okay, and then we have some extra settings for the acoustics front. You can go here to sound and notification, and you can go to sound enhancement, and we got BS, audio enhance, loudness, surround, and lossless Bluetooth mode. So those are all options available for the acoustics. I have to say that the acoustics are quite okay. I'm happy with the volume, but it needs a bit more bass in the future. Now, as far as the camera goes, it's a typical setup. 30 megapixel shooter, dual LED flash, 5 megapixel shooter with 85-degree wide angle lens. Now the camera app, let's see just how fast it can be opened. So here we go. Took quite a while, so pretty slow on this front, and in spite of that, the focus speed was rather okay in my book. So slow app opening, but reasonably fast focus, always considering the price tag and the claims that such a phone makes. The zoom is fluid, but when filming it gets rather slow as well, and picture taking is certainly on the slow side. The interface has been tweaked, it's not standard Android fare, and it's very minimalistic and has very few options. Those classic ones, timestamp, resolution, capture mode and shutter sound are here, and aside from those we have these capture modes: normal, food, HDR, intelligent, scenery, beauty and panorama, and many of them have sub modes. Food, for example, has a few of them: delicious, enthusiastic, cold wine, afternoon or dinner, and we have even more. So if you opt for, let's say, intelligent, this one can feel 8 scenarios. Scenery has a bunch of sub modes, so that's a nice thing, those sub modes. Okay, now we also have flash options and a variety of effects. Apparently there are 30 of them. I didn't find as many, but probably the other ones count as well. Here you can film up to full HD, and there aren't many options in this front. We're done with the camera UI. Time to go to the gallery and see how the camera handled the heat, and by heat I mean our tests that usually involve shots taken outside or inside. Okay, so I started with some indoor shots at a burger joint, and we got here some burgers and fries. 40% of the shots are failed and 60% are quite good. This is what the food mode produces. It adds a little bit of extra filter on top of it. In the end, the shots that are good are very good, and the ones that are bad are very bad. So the camera is not very constant when it comes to indoor shooting. Few more shots here and some zoom in, okay at the first level but blurry at the second level. And here you'll find a sample of HDR, which is quite well done here. But now it's time to get serious and go to the outside shots. So once again, HDR in action, making the shot maybe a bit too white. Overall, I have to say that the colors were rather okay, clarity was also nice, but we struggled to focus properly for the close-ups. When we did manage to focus, the close-ups of flowers were very good, but that struggle was not exactly pleasant. So we tested the zoom, we were happy with the zoom quality and details, and the two core problems of the camera are the focusing and the brightness. Details are okay, colors are okay, the details in landscape shots are good, we got nice flower close-ups, but the dynamic range and the focusing pose some problems. Okay, let's get past those. The selfies are rather okay. My expectations were small, or better said low, and the hair and skin texture are reasonable, I have to say, so not many objections in this front. And every once in a while we come across a very blurry shot where what's happening in the distance you cannot tell. But once again the proportion remains about 60% good shots, 40% underwhelming shots, so keep that in mind and try to focus properly so you won't have such a bad focus or problems with the dynamic range. The panorama is modest, 2856 over 568, pretty clear but also a bit burnt in our case. There are some problems with the background dynamic range, and maybe aside from the selfies and the colors, the camera does not shine, and I mean both cameras. So not very impressive, but I've seen worse. I will put it below the Vernitor, for example, and superior to the Yumi Max that disappointed us recently. We also have low light shots, and we're not afraid to show them. Sadly, these are pretty blurry, dark, We have big streetlight halos, some ghosting effects, and the flash, well, it's powerful but maybe too powerful, making everything feel washed out and a bit too white. We have an okay monument texture, quite a few monuments and statues here, but that ghosting effect and that blur certainly does no favors to the camera. Aside from the flash, nothing to remember here. Okay, so we're done with the photo section, time for the video section. In my least favorite format, which is 3GPP Full HD, 30 frames per second, 70 megapixel bitrate, and let's see one of the first videos. One thing to remember here for sure is that the microphone is good. Even if people are talking and the water is hissing, you capture the mood quite nicely. The camera has some refocusing problems, it's a bit shaky, there's detail loss when zooming in, the clarity is reasonable and the colors are well calibrated, but other than that, not very happy with it. As you can see, we're losing a ton of details, and now let's see another clip. Okay, so we got this one here with a lot of motion and a lot of colors. Refocusing happening again. Exposure is rather good in this shot. Clarity is nice, colors are good. This is one of the better ones, but in the end, the shakiness and the constant refocusing are annoying. During the nighttime, things get a little bit worse because it's a 16 frames per second video and 9 megapixel clip, so not impressive, clearly shaky, and we got some quality loss and detail loss. At the slightest movement you already lose focus and quality, so that's a big no-no. It's foggy and shaky and you can ignore it basically. So only two things to remember here: the colors and the microphone, and maybe, just maybe, the selfies if you're not too picky. Okay, so as far as the browser goes, this is the pre-installed one, and let me just access gsndom.com. That's a reasonably fast browser, I have to say, but the benchmarks for it, like Sunspider, Velamo and the works, are quite poor. Virtual keyboard is available here in the stock version, and on the connectivity front you already saw the 2 SIM slots, and we also have support for LTE category 4 up to 150 megapixel download, HSPA+, there's only FDD, LTE, GPS and GLONASS, Wi-Fi BGN, Bluetooth 4.0, dual SIM dual standby with 2 micro SIM slots. You got micro USB here, there's no trace of USB Type-C, and we also have a turbo download feature that combines 4G and Wi-Fi for stronger, faster and better downloads. In the dialer section, you have to know that there's speed dialing here, the calls are loud and clear, and we have a dual noise reduction microphone. We also did a speed test, probably the most interesting aspect of the review. TP-Link is a big Wi-Fi router maker, and I was curious to see if they live to their name. Here we have all the tests we did. So the biggest result via Wi-Fi was 51 megapixel in download and 25 in upload. I've seen much better, I've seen double, so expected more, while on 4G it was rather okay, 65 megapixel in download and 42 in upload, reasonable, but I've seen more here as well. Now on the software front, you can tell we're running Android 5.1 Lollipop with some custom icons. You already saw the custom camera UI. It's a minimal and abstract experience. It feels like the 2 generations ago LG UI if you want to continue the comparison with the LG G3. Multitasking is done via carousel and have a tool that shuts down everything. And we also have a 4th virtual button that triggers customizations through wallpapers, widgets, theme, effects and settings. Widgets are the stock ones. And let's see what else. Themes with an online store, effects, pretty straightforward, and settings related to the home screen, auto group apps, one key lock and more. You can also pinch the home screen to see all of your screens. Come on. So here we go, these are all the screens available, and the drop down section includes notifications and quick settings. The quick settings have been customized, at least as far as the color is concerned. We have a screenshot option with 3 options. There is a scrolling screenshot, normal screenshot and the editable one, which you can see here, and you can also exit it. Then we go to the settings, which are pretty straightforward, nothing fancy. Also customized, connectivity options, display, battery, apps, location, security, backup, date and time and so forth. There's no fingerprint scanner here and no gimmicks, not even the gestures we saw on so many phones. All the apps are placed on the home screens, there's no app drawer, and I counted the apps and found a bloatware-ish 41 pre-installed applications. Most interesting ones are system management, which is actually useful and has a cool animation. We also have notes, note-taking application, and a bunch of tools like sound recorder, mirror, and even a photo editor, which is very close to the stock one, so nothing hugely fancy here. Okay, we're pretty much done with the review of the TP-Link Neffos C5 Max, and it's time for the verdict. Now on the pro side, got a pretty okay display, good performance, a mid-level battery that you can live with, okay volume, some good close-ups with the main camera, decent selfies, and the customized interface is not exactly bad, we can dig it. Now on the cons side, we don't have a fingerprint scanner, there's a bit of bloatware, the GPU is rather poor and old, the lack of bass for the speaker may be a problem, and the fact that the camera is not constant is surely a problem. The video capture is rather poor and very shaky, we're running Lollipop, I expected Marshmallow to be honest, and I expected faster Wi-Fi from a company that makes Wi-Fi routers after all. This remains the definitive mid-ranger, and it doesn't break records, but it also doesn't break negative records, neither positive nor negative. It has okay performance, okay selfies, an okay display, and okay is the operational word here. The camera is not constant, it remains a phone that's rather reasonable for gaming, doesn't overheat, runs pretty much most of the games in the Play Store, takes reasonable pics if you're patient to focus, and it's better than some other lower and lesser known Chinese brand I've seen, and people already know this brand, so they may opt for it simply for the name. So it remains the mid-ranger by definition, doesn't break records, and that's the story of the Neffos C5 Max. Bye bye.